Welcome back to Speak with Anuj. Thank you for tuning in. What makes a storyteller truly engaging? How do you adapt your communication styles to different platforms, whether it is the stage or the screen or real life social movements? And how does a simple shift in approach change the way people perceive you? Answers to these questions and a whole lot more in today's episode. I get to sit and have a conversation with a colleague I truly admire, Frisha Bowman Behram, a powerhouse communicator. She's a master of ceremonies, a content creator, a theatre artist, and a storyteller who has taken her stories not just from the stage to the screen, but to the beaches of Mumbai, where she runs an incredible cleanup campaign. In this episode, we talk about the art of holding an audience's attention, how to adapt to different mediums and different types of audiences, and the magic of authenticity in communication. She also has a little confession to make about how one of my reels apparently changed her approach to work. Insights, inspiration, and a lot of laughter. Let's dive into this episode with Frisha Bowman Behram. Hello, Frisha. Welcome. Thank you for speaking with me on Speak with Anuj. I know we've been contemporaries and colleagues for a long time, and I was hoping we would get to share a stage before we share the screen together at some point, but I hope that happens soon enough. But I've really admired your work over the years as a storyteller. You know, you're an MC, you're a content creator. There's so much that you do, which I'm hoping to unpack. Most importantly, it's the authenticity that you always bring to your expression. And I have started this podcast to learn communication styles, approach to public speaking from people from various walks of life. And therefore, I'd like to learn from you as well about what this entire beautiful world that we are associated with is about. So thank you. Thank you for coming in.
My God, thank you for having me on board, because I think we're both like mutual admirers of not only the art and craft that we have on stage, but also the content that both of us put out. And I've been learning so much just from you and, the way that you express yourself and the extra knowledge that you bring in on stage. Anuj, I have a confession to make. You had made a reel once, okay, where you spoke about how you go to every event with your own kit. You had spoken about how you always carry your pens, your markers, your stapler, all of that. I got inspired by that. I'm going to bring it out a little bit later, but I made my own kit. And only thanks to you, I carry one at every single event. And there are numerous event planners out there that are thankful and grateful just to you for making me do that. And I hope that if we have, some young people from our industry that are listening to us right now, or even experienced people from the industry who never thought about it, Anuj is the man that started it. Let's always make sure that we give him that credit.
Wow. That was the podcast. Thank you for logging in. It was great talking to you.
Our work is done. Bye, guys. Now Anuj and I are just going to have a coffee and fats.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt here. In the flow of conversation when we were recording the podcast, I forgot to ask her later about the emceeing kit. I really wanted to see it. So I messaged her later and she sent it to me on WhatsApp. Here's the video.
Okay, Anuj, thank you so much for the inspiration of making sure that I carry my own stationery kit whenever I go for any event. Like I said earlier, there's many event planners that have thanked you for giving me this idea.
All right, back to the conversation now. What got you to storytelling? What got you started off with creative expression?
It was, so I was actually a child theatre actor, and I did my first professional play as a child at the age of 6. It was like a children's play that we ran summer holidays. Yeah, that time, what did we have? We didn't have anything to do. So, there were limited choices of what your kid could do, classes, this, that. And this was a professional play that we ran on summer holidays and Diwali holidays. And I used to perform in that. And I think somewhere my journey with just creativity, thinking out of the box, using my imagination and letting it run wild all the time started at a very young age. Pretty much everything that I've done in life has always been connected to something that has a creative outlet to it.
I so relate to that because I have a background in theatre. I started many years ago, did a lot of professional theatre as well. And I think that has been the foundation for every form of creative expression or performing arts that I have indulged in.
Yeah.
Somewhere it gives you that holistic training, so to speak. I know it's an overused word, holistic, but it prepares you mentally, emotionally, physically, vocally. There's so much that a theater
Spontaneity.
Spontaneity, absolutely. And if you begin at an early age, you get ready to face audiences of any
Yeah.
kinds. And you
Yeah.
do that in one take after, hours and hours of days and weeks of rehearsals. You have that one
Absolutely.
shot to deliver it. So you can't be more prepared than that.
Absolutely. And I've dealt with some crazy situations on stage, right? Like I've literally seen it all being somebody. Of course, I stopped theater a very long time back. I'm not doing it anymore. Other things in life have, taken over so much that I feel like I don't have the time for it. But the things that I've experienced on stage, I literally feel have prepared me for moments that have happened with us on an event stage. Like this one time I had an actor walk on stage and he said the last line of the play as his first line.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, did we just end the play right now? Now, how are we getting everything back on track? And how are we making this whole story weave for people? And everybody thought it was so clever when we finally managed to get everything back together. And that's the magic of it all, right? Because only you know, even at an event, if anything goes wrong, only we know, as long as we don't let the audience know.
Yes. I'm curious though, how did you recover from that when the actor said the last line?
I burst out laughing in character, mumbled a few things under my breath, and said, okay, moving on. Let's now try and go back to the first page and see how we can get this back on track.
You were an MC before you knew it.
Probably. Yeah. And for me, it was very funny. Like, I didn't know about emceeing as a career. Even when I got into it, I didn't know that there was something called as an MC. I was doing my TV shows at this point. I was extremely burnt out. I was doing 2 daily shows, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like I was doing stupid things like sleeping in my car for like those 6 hours because it didn't make sense to go home, then going back to another set, literally telling my producers, I need a break. Can y'all please put me in a coma? Can y'all do something? Like, can we figure this out so that I can get some easy time over here? And someone came up to me and they were like, there's this thing, it's called MC. And I was doing a play at that point. Gosh, I don't know how I was doing that in the middle of everything.
Wow. Two shows and a play.
Yeah, but it was a long running play. So we could just like plug and play, get there on a Saturday, do the shows Saturday, Sunday, and we're done. And that day, somebody from Wistcraft came up to me backstage and said, there's this thing, it's live event. It's the same thing. We'll give you a piece of paper. You just have to remember these pointers and you have to go on stage and say it. And my first event was terrible. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no clue. I'd worn some dress I had borrowed from some friend. I had tied my hair up in some bun. I'd put some lipstick on my face and just gone on stage and memorized this piece of paper. I didn't know what was happening, what was going on. Pretty much like I felt like no one's going to employ me after this, but I loved it. I loved the energy, the exhilaration, the same kick that you get out of a play.
Yeah.
And I was like, this guy is giving me lots of money also, man. Way more than a theater play is going to pay me. And I mean, of course, it changed after that. You then realized the magnitude of what it really takes and the hard work and the time that you really need to put in and all of that. Then that slowly followed.
And in hindsight, you also realize that it was a good thing that your first event got screwed up, because if it probably had gone the other way, you wouldn't have learned as much. because then you are following the fact that you love doing this despite the fact that it probably didn't work out the first time, and then you find ways to do it again and do it better. In that process, I discovered emceeing again accidentally. But then in that process of figuring out what this profession actually is, you start looking up to people who are doing the same thing. And back in the day, there weren't as many MCs as there are now. Who did you look up to? Who did you take notes from?
A lot of times when I do interviews and people will ask me, who do you get inspiration from, or who's your inspiration? I find it very difficult to answer questions like that. Like, I'm not sure whether I look at other people and that's how I get inspired. I can look at somebody from a completely different field and get inspired by them. There were a few people that I knew that were talking at big platforms, and I kind of was looking at them, and one of them was my aunt. She was the speaker of the South African Parliament.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was always a very big fan of hers. The way she would walk into a room and she didn't have to say anything, but she would command that presence. The way she would speak when she was on stage, when she would address the parliament in her opening speech.
Right.
I would sit and watch that and I would be like, okay, wow, this is what she's doing. It's her body language. How is she kind of looking at people and connecting with them? I gained a lot of, I learned a lot from her. I also learned a lot on the job. With every event, and even till today, I sit back and I look at okay, what happened there and how should I fix it the next time? Or how can I be doing it even better? Or this worked, this didn't work. And maybe the next time we have this kind of audience, let's try it again with this little bit, let's turn it around. But also, if we have to talk about contemporaries, while at that point, I never got to meet her. And today I work very closely with her, Marisha. So there would be a lot of people who would tell me about her. I never reached out to her at that point, but they would tell me little things about what she did on stage, just in terms of connectivity, trying to understand who are the important people, working your way, around dynamics like that. And today I work very closely with her because, we do WOW Awards every single year.
Yes.
And I always tell her that, Marisha, you were such a figure for me, but you were that elusive figure that everybody spoke about, but I didn't really know. It was like that.
Wonderful. And she's rightfully, deserving of all of this, these wonderful words you've said. And she has a lot of praise for you and your work and the way you've evolved as an artist. And that is evident with the way the two of you work together. I think it's so beautiful that sometimes when the people you look up to turn around and admire you, that validation feels a lot more special.
Absolutely.
It's just apart from everybody else who says, hey, you're doing a good job. But then this person turns around and says, oh, and then you take a look and you feel like you've arrived, somewhere along the way.
Absolutely. It's crazy that you said that. I received a New Year wish from a very, very senior person from our event industry. And it was a very personal message, actually saying that I have admired the way that you have evolved, and you're one of the few people that now I look up to by looking at your work. And I can't tell you how my heart just melted, physically I could just feel the melt and the excitement at the same time, because really, like you just said it, these are people that we completely admire. We turn to, we know, we're just seeing their trajectory and we're also thinking what next? What next?
Wow.
And to hear from them is absolutely amazing.
I'm so happy for you for experiencing this. So tell me, from doing 2 TV shows and then a day and then a play and then getting into emceeing, and then of course you've evolved to picking up the camera and saying, okay, I'm going to tell stories of the world around me. Whether it is social issues, whether it is socio-political, whether it's economic, whether it's any observations that you make of everyday life around you. What led you to doing that? How much courage did you have to muster up despite having the background or the experience?
I'll be very honest with you. The idea was my husband. This is 8 years back. And he turned to me and, he was like, events and all is okay, but you're not doing your theater, and you've kind of like lost your voice as well. YouTube is something that is picking up in our country, and you should try and see how you can be one of the first to get in there. And I can very proudly say today that I was one of the first, especially when it came to giving informational, educational content.
Yes.
There wasn't anyone that was doing this specific kind of content at that time. He was like, you're going to have to figure out how to do it on your own. What is going to be the story? How you're going to do it? I had signed on with an agency as well. So they would also help me with certain amount of stuff, because it's too much to, at that time, there weren't so many tutorials. There weren't so many people that you could follow. That all of that was not there, right? We had to figure this stuff out on our own, or work in tangent with somebody who knew what they were doing. I remember my first video I shot and I re-edited at least 10 times before I published it.
Yeah. I feel you.
Yeah. It's not that simple and it's not that easy. But after that, it was just like, okay, we've got something here. We can keep building on it and we can keep changing it. And at that point also, I was looking at some kind of self-improvement. I had become a very materialistic person, okay? I was only, not that it's bad to read a Vogue magazine. It's not, okay?
Not at all.
But that was the only thing I was doing. And that's where it's a problem. I was only limiting my worldview down to a lot of fluff. And I needed to also expand my mind. And I needed to also just learn other things, see what else was around me, not have this very like one track worldview that I was going down, that road that I was going down. And that's when I said to myself, and my husband, of course, was like, come on, babe, you can't be this person. Like, you have to expand your mind. And that's when we came up with WAC. And it was very simple. He was like, what's the question that you're asking today? Who's the richest dog in the world? Simple question. Why don't you Google it? Why don't you make a video on it? And why don't you tell everybody about how Gunther is the richest dog in the world? And that's it. That's it. It just started with me saying, oh, I wonder how that works. Or, oh, I wonder how this works. And if I understood it and I could break it down, I broke it down for my audience as well.
One of the tenets of communication, isn't it? To be an effective communicator. I mean, even if you're not an MC, if you're on stage as anyone giving a speech at a corporate event or at a wedding, you could be the best man at a wedding. To be able to understand the story, break it down for yourself and enjoy it for yourself while saying it, your audience will get it and enjoy it at the same time.
Yeah.
What are the few pillars of effective communication that you believe you bring to your delivery every day?
There is a 10-pole that I like to use, which is called as KISS. And I think KISS as well. And keep it simple and stupid. Yep. That's it. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't try and sound too intelligent when, maybe you're not. I mean, I like to recognize my limitation and stick within what I know and what I can deliver. And when you're able to do that and just be honest, like if I'm making a video and I'm not able to relate to what I'm saying in that video, then I shouldn't be making that video, because that is not what I stand for. Just to give you an example, there was like, we were chatting with the team and everyone was like, let's talk about this new virus. Let's talk about this new virus. It's clickbait. Even though we know that right now we don't know enough. Yeah. And I was like, no, we're not those people. We're not that kind of page. We don't go down that route. We don't do things just to sensationalize and get views. We keep it simple. We keep it honest. And when we do that, and the audience can make out, they're not stupid. They can see through everything, every word that you say, every expression that you make. And as long as you do that, you will actually be more revered and more liked for your honesty and your transparency.
People can sense when you're not being authentic.
Yeah.
But people still fall for all kinds of communication, even though there is a sense of identifying. There is something that your gut's telling you that this person has an agenda, or they're overselling something. But a lot of people still fall for it. Why does that happen? Is that the charisma of the speaker themselves sometimes, or the creator on your screen that you're watching? Because there's a lot of overselling happening right now in the digital world today, and it's something
Yeah.
I consciously stay away from. When I teach communication, I don't tell my students that you will learn communication from me and go make a crore a year, or do a show for 10,000 people. I do not give them those promises. I just say that today you will take maybe one or a few steps forward into becoming a better communicator. The rest you have to build for yourself. But people still fall for that. So does charisma overtake authenticity?
Absolutely. I just think it's about asking yourself, what is it do you really want? And how do you want to brand yourself? And how do you want to position yourself? A lot of people will tell me, oh my God, you could be getting millions of views. You've been, doing it for so long. You could be having like 4 million followers, 5 million followers. Why don't you start talking in Hindi? Why don't you sensationalize just a little bit? Why don't you do a little more clickbaity things? I don't want to position myself like that.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's not what I want to be remembered for, and it's not the kind of person I want to be. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong in the people. Yeah, charisma can get you a long, long way. And let's also not forget today the numbers game is very, very high. There are
Very high,
people
yes.
who have millions of followers who are suddenly being called as climate advocates when they don't really do anything for the climate. But why? Because they have the numbers. Anything that they might say, even fortnightly, about the climate might reach a larger audience than an influencer that has only, a couple of lakh followers talking about it every day.
Absolutely.
It is also like a numbers game. And I think it's not just the creators, but it's also the brands that are following in a certain direction, that are allowing people to pivot themselves and position themselves in certain ways. They're giving them that power to do that.
So in this entire ecosystem of numbers and likes and engagement metrics and all the noise, of course, you stand out with authenticity and accepting who you are and your identity. So self-awareness has a huge role to play. How much of a role does empathy have to play in effective communication? And I'm saying this from a standpoint of you cover a spectrum of topics when you speak about. So
another one of my temples is that I generally tend not to give my opinion because I'm only trying to either explain a fact or take a new concept and tell you what it's all about, or just explain the difference between left wing and right wing. What wing I stand for doesn't matter because I'm only giving you an explanation over here. So I actually feel that empathy and your opinion, unless I'm doing an opinion piece, where I'll open the piece saying that today we're not going to talk about any facts. I've been seeing something that's been happening. Like I did this whole reel where I spoke about how we have a very bad child pornography problem on Instagram.
True. Yep.
And, that reel exploded. And everybody was like, oh my God, I completely agree. And I opened it with saying that I'm going to talk about how I feel right now. So I think you kind of have to decide, the spectrum is so large. Like what kind of creator are you? What does your page stand for? Maybe you are an opinion-based page. There are so many pages where the people only talk about their opinion on topics. But my page is not that. And then once in a while, my little moniker is like, if I'm on the sofa, that means you were getting ready for an opinion piece. I save that only for my opinion pieces. I think empathy is not so important if you're one of those pages where you're educating somebody.
It's that choice you make on how you're going to be. Coming from, again, going offline,
from off the screen to coming to the stage, you deal with different kinds of people on an everyday basis. How do you adapt yourself, your communication style? There are often CXO audiences that you address, versus there are events where there are celebrities and sports stars and movie stars, versus there are, let's say, high powered sales teams, versus there are dealer meets,
Yeah.
or at a wedding, so how do you keep switching from audience to audience?
Yeah.
And often does a switch happen within an event itself?
One of the biggest things, and I know that you are a big promoter of this as well, which is homework. Now I know that things have changed a lot, but I would say like a few years back, like 6, 7, 8 years back, people used to not even think it was important for us to do a meeting with a client or
Correct.
do a call with the client. They would just be like, "Arey yaar, you know what to do na? Bas jaake bas hi, hello bol do, what they do, act ko introduce karo aur ho gaya." Did you experience this in those early years?
Absolutely. I mean, they would just say 2 घंटे पहले आ जाना,
हाँ.
ये अनाउंस करना है, और बीच में कुछ गैप है तो कुछ कर दो यार,
कुछ कर दो ना. हाँ.
कुछ कर दो क्या है?
Right? And of course, our industry has evolved so much now that the agency, the client, and you, we all want to work together. I want to, if I get a phone call saying the client would like to do a briefing meeting, I don't turn around and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm really busy. We can only do this on the day of the show." No.
True.
I want to have a good show with you. We will get on those calls. If I'm not convinced with the brief that I've been given, gone through the show flow, which is the point, the band needs to change. Okay, are we saying that we're going to do 20 minutes? No, they might go into 30 minutes. No, guys, that's too long. We can't keep doing icebreakers for 30 minutes. What is the crossover time? Is it really all those little things, right? When we sit down and we get down to the basics of every single thing in the event, the brief on the audience, though, of course you're going to know. And you're going to ask them. These are questions I always ask. Who's in the audience? Talk about past experiences with me. Tell me something that worked. Tell me something that didn't work. So I understand where I'm going with this. Tell me something that you want. Maybe you had something in your mind and you felt, "Oh my God, maybe we should have done this last year. Let's do it this year." So I also drill the client a little bit. I try and, get them thinking a little more because they know the pulse of who's sitting in that room. And that information allows me to understand how much I need to change and mold myself.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
No, but there have been times where it's flopped. Now, of course, much earlier, where you feel like, okay, I think this is what I can do and this will work. And I'll get the audience to do this and I'll get them to do that. But I think what's important is to understand that if something is not working, drop it immediately.
Absolutely. Don't drag it on.
Don't drag it on.
Yeah.
And there's another thing that I have when a couple of other MCs call me and they're like, this incident happened. And the client came and they were like, "Arey yaar, wo icebreaker, it just went on for too long. But I thought it was, working." I'm like, you know what? Maybe you should pause for a second. Also reflect on, was it really working? Why are we also they're called icebreakers because we're breakers, not movies. And it's easy to love the sound of your own voice. It's very easy.
Yes.
But also reading the room is very, very important.
Yeah. If you think it's working, who is it working for? The audience or you? The briefing meetings that you were talking about, I asked the question why a lot. Like I first begin, if they tell me that this is a annual celebration R&R we're doing for our employees, I ask them, why are you doing this right now? Then I break it down to who are the people coming in, obviously the questions that we ask. But I often notice that there are a few handful of people in positions of power who are taking decisions for thousands of people in their company based on their purview of how life is or their expectation of how a celebration should be. And they expect that hum jo bol rahe hain, wo audience ko sab samajh mein aa jayega. So then when you break it down and you start getting them to think from the audience's point of view, then the whole event starts shaping, the objective of it starts shaping up. and what you want to do. I also believe that in all of these years, and I've had of course a handful of events that didn't work because I thought what I was doing was fine. It didn't align with the objectives, and that's okay. You learn and you move on. But I think most importantly, what works for me now is that I have a lot more experience of life than I did 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And I'm able to convert that into stories or content or into talking points. I'm able to take on from my own references rather than something I probably read as a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old. There's a lot more content depth that I am able to bring now as an MC than I did earlier. And I see that difference because then when you are able to switch from entertainment to inspirational content within an event, you're introducing a dance act versus a motivational speaker who's coming in and setting the context. That experience makes so much of a difference.
Absolutely. And it helps also within, like, with your scripting.
Ah.
But I actually have a question for you, that what do you do then? See, there's two types of shows also and two types of clients, right? There's some of them that have that complete trust in you and the way that you can express the narrative. And they're like, yeah, just go for it because I know that you will be able to weave the story well for me. And then there are the ones who are just like, no, just stick to the script, and
So go on. Please finish your thought.
yeah, no, it's just that, you know what I'm saying. Like, and then like you are like, but I can be saying so much more and I can be bringing so much more to the table. And then sometimes, that same client will turn around and say, nahi yaar, bahut boring tha yaar. She just was word to word. Like, I thought I did exactly what you wanted me to do.
There are two kinds of reading the room. One is reading the audience, and the other is reading the organizers. So the expectation that I make clear right at the start is that I don't follow a written script. Unless it is a show that is being live telecast, whether as a television show or on social media streamings. Now, one tenet to keep in mind always is that a lot of corporations that we host events for are publicly listed companies.
Yes.
And sometimes when that event is being live telecast, every word matters. So there the script has gone through a legal filtration process. It's gone through an HR filtration process, and it's been put on a teleprompter for you to follow, because it is that kind of event where you can't just ad-lib. In a closed event, you can ad-lib and go wild with it. But then you have to understand the responsibility of each word. And then you say, okay, you've written it, you've approved it, and they tell you right at the start that, this is the script and we'd like you to stick to it. Now, your maturity allows you to veer a little bit away to rephrase or paraphrase sentences, but you don't go too far from that objective. The others, where it is a closed event, I tell them that, listen, I don't follow a written script word to word. You give me the talking points. You've brought me on because you have a certain faith in my ability as a linguist, as a communicator. Just give me the talking points and let me weave the story around it, because I will take on the energy of the audience and then build my content on the stage. Sitting in your conference room, I cannot MC because I'm not seeing the audience there.
Yeah, exactly.
As honestly as I can tell this to them, again, the authenticity in my intention will convince them that, okay, we can trust this guy to do what he's doing. The moment I do my opening on stage, having said all of this, the moment I do my opening on stage and I come back, I ask the showrunner, my point of contact backstage, or I ask the client, was the opening okay? Was the context setting okay? Is there any feedback for my opening? And if they give me feedback that, listen, stay away from the business points, let the leaders handle that, you just energize and engage the audience, then I keep it generic. But that feedback loop constantly has to be maintained even while the event is going on, so that you mold your words accordingly.
Yeah.
That's how I go about it.
Yeah, that, this feedback thing is something that a lot of us have now kind of like been talking about. We're so afraid of feedback. And I know that there are people of two schools of thought, where one is like, no, it's very important. You should message the client a few days later, or the agency a few days later, and get some kind of feedback from them. And then the second
Mm.
school of thought is that it's okay, just let it be. If they like you, they'll call you back again. And that is feedback enough. Which one are you?
I call them or I politely message them that thank you for the opportunity. Is there anything that you think I could have done better? Is there any scope of improvement that I could do for my own self? I genuinely ask them this, whether it's the event manager or the client. And sometimes they say in very cryptic words that, hey, no, it was great. But then you cross check with both teams because you are focused on the mic. There are so many other things that are going on technically. Sometimes the event hasn't worked because of various other factors. And often this also happens that the MC has made the scapegoat of it. You know, कि यार इसने बोला नहीं, या आपने जो मुझे इनपुट दिया था उस हिसाब से मैंने
ये
बोला
तो मैंने
था.
तो बोला.
Then that so you look at the bigger picture, you take the loss and chalo move on. But I do ask for feedback, not with the intention of getting another event with them, but just to know that did I deliver what you had hired me for? My intention is to if you hired me for X, my intention is to give you 10x in
Right.
return,
Oh, yeah.
or at least 5x in return.
Absolutely.
That's where I'm coming from. So for me, see, I keep saying this, that in the event industry, we are in the business of creating long-term relationships over short-term projects. We meet, we do a show, the show ends, we go our ways. And that's a short-term project. But the long-term
Absolutely.
relationship is built on your ability to speak with them and connect with them and then just show them that you care enough about their event. Not
Yeah.
कि मेरा पैसा आ गया, show खत्म हो गया, चलो गए.
Tata bye. Yeah.
I think the authenticity is not just on stage, it is in you as a person, which brings me to my next question is that does being an individual constantly in the process of refining themselves make you a better artist?
Of course. Any day. And, I feel that everything that I have done in my life, not just with WAC, with the content that I do, or with Carter Cleanup, my beach cleanup movement that I
Coming to
do.
Carter Cleanup.
Yeah. But I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get to what you
No,
said.
please go ahead.
So for a couple of years, and I started this during the lockdown, a little before the lockdown or during the
Yes.
lockdown, I can't remember right now, where I said to myself, every year I will learn a new skill. So I said during the lockdown, because everything went kaput, I learned how to become an editor. I'm like a pro at FCP now and Premiere Pro. I know how to use those software.
Wow.
Then
Wow.
in the second year after that, I said, I'm going to learn a new dance form. And so I learned ballet.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah. It's like, why not? Let's learn something.
Why not? Wonderful.
So I do this every year. I'm going to be very honest with you. I have not figured out mine for 2025. I'm still trying to figure out what it is, that one new skill that I'm going to learn this year. But it's just like editing, of course, yes, it had to do with my content creation. Ballet, it has nothing to do with everything that I do. I'm not going to go on and start performing in some opera and, go in that direction. But just learning something new, pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone, constantly challenging and redefining ourselves. Not only is it going to make you a brighter and a smarter person, scientifically, you're going to create new neural synapses in your brain, which is going to help you from mental disorders, which is just going to make you smarter. It's going to make you the more interesting person in the room. Why would you not want to do all of this for yourself? And it doesn't have to be something really big, Like, honestly, I'll tell you, one of the ideas I'm toying with for this year is to master jigsaws. So I have got my first 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. It's just the 8th of Jan, so I've not opened it yet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm just saying, every year you can't be doing some like defining, groundbreaking thing. Yeah. Everybody doesn't have the bandwidth all the time. So I might just do something like that this year as well. But I think it's nice. Instead of having like resolution, I find this more fun.
I haven't figured out what my agenda is for this year, but I'm definitely going to take a leaf from your book and try and see if there's a skill. There's a whole long pending list of skills that I want to pursue. I guess I'm going to do that. My wife, in fact, right now is solving a jigsaw puzzle of a painting by Monet. And yeah, it's 1,000-piece puzzle. And she was abroad. She went to a Monet exhibition and she brought a 1,000-piece puzzle. And she just laid it out on the table and started just like a pro. Like the chess masters come in and they pull out all the pawns and they put them on the board. And she just started. And I'm like, how are you doing this? But normally I'd solve jigsaw puzzles online with a cheat code. But just at it, so incredible. I want to come to Carter Cleanup because this is a very admirable and a huge part of your life. Every Sunday, you're out there cleaning the beach, motivating people to come in. But as wonderful as an initiative as this is socially, I want to approach this from a perspective of communication because this is a podcast about communication. Now, Frisha, you're on screen motivating people with stories and getting all of us aware of the world around us. You're on stage at events delivering inspirational content, telling stories, motivating or energizing a closed, controlled group of people. And then you're at a beach cleaning up, motivating a random group of people who might be, watching you or listening to you and trying to motivate them to do something selflessly. There is no event agenda. There's no social media dopamine there. How do you communicate this and motivate people?
The fact, and whenever I do make it to the cleanups, I'm going to be very honest with you. Initially, of course, when we started, it was during the lockdown. Things had just opened up. Time and bandwidth was there. Now with our events and stuff like that, we do it every Saturday. Generally on a Friday, Saturday, you know how it is, we're not at home. If I am in Bombay and I've even finished a show at 12 o'clock at night, then I'll drag myself to the beach. I'll go over there. But if I'm not in Bombay, then there's not much that I can do. But when I am there, I make sure I do the address when we open. So we do like a briefing and then we do the cleanup and then we do a debriefing. And the first thing I say to all of them is the fact that you just showed up says a lot. There are a lot of people, there are maybe some corporates who are trying to do this as a CSR activity. There are some NSS kids that have come because they just need to kind of get my signature and collect it for points and stuff like that. And there are lots of people that have selflessly actually set that whatever their motive is, at least that morning, you set your alarm clock, you got onto a train, you got onto a bus, a rickshaw, whatever it is, and you made your way to this beach. That in itself says so much. I have so many of my friends, I've been doing this for like now 200 weeks, who have not come, right? But there are these random people that have done that. That in itself shows that you care. And it's very a beach cleaning experience. I've had people walk away, some people come and they say that it's been a meditative experience. Some people come because you're just quietly like doing what you need to do, right? And you're just like cleaning. You'll see a lot of people, they'll have their headphones on, they'll be just taking one small patch of sand. Then there'll be the ones that are walking around with one bag, laughing away, making a Saturday morning out of it. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You came, you showed up, you saw how bad the situation was, you helped. That's more than half of what anybody has done around. And you were there. That's it. That's all that matters. You were there that morning. And I think that in itself has allowed us today to have so many of our, volunteers who become regular volunteers. We in ourselves have become a community. The core group that shows up very, very regularly. There are almost 15 of them now that have been with us, that have been a part of this journey for the last 200 weeks. Everybody may not come every weekend. You've got something or the other that you need to do. But there's also a sense of community and belonging and the same thought process that has brought all these people together. And the beach is a beautiful thing, yeah, Anuj. It's the one place that doesn't judge based on caste, religion, or your stature. It's a kind of event where anyone can come. We've had people who are jogging by and have seen us and said, "Can I join?" We've had young children from very underprivileged backgrounds that have come and said, "Auntie, auntie, मैं भी करूँ आपके साथ?" They've come and joined. We had this one woman, she was from Urban Clap. She had her whole massage table and everything with her. And she saw us and she said, "I also want to come and help." So yeah, I think it's very easy actually to motivate and inspire people because those are the ones that actually showed up on that beach.
Because I guess to communicate effectively, you don't just need words, you just need action with intent. If you're doing it and you believe in it, and it is bound to resonate with somebody, and it's something as a communication exercise. You don't have to say anything. You can just create a movement by just doing it.
Yeah, when we're at an R&R, rewards and recognition, in case this is for other people that are listening. But when we're at an R&R, it's the first thing I love to say to everybody that's sitting in the audience because there has been so much thought, so much intent and hard work, which is why each and every one of you is actually sitting over here right now. You've earned your place in this space. And I guess maybe that's kind of like the same thing when we're doing like a beach cleanup as well. The fact that you're just here right now in this current moment means something.
Wow. Thank you for doing that. This is so wonderful. And I've had so much to learn from this conversation. Beginning, of course, with the one skill that I'm going to pursue this year. I'm going to start now. There is a guitar in my storage there, which is representative of my intentions for the last 7 years. But I guess I'm going to get to it now. But thank you, Frisha. Thank you so much for talking to me and just cleaning up not just beaches but the world of communication.
Anuj, first song for your wife once you master the guitar, and then second song for all of us to see on social media. Third song for an event.
Okay. Done. Chalo. Goal set. 3 goals set. Do you know, by the way, I made a music video for her?
Oh, no.
I'd written a song called Bus 5 Minute, and there's an animated music video that I made. I'll send you the link later. And for those listening, I'll put it in the show notes. But you must watch it. It's a little picture into our life. So
sweet. Bhej do. I'd love to see it.
So thank you for being on Speak with Anuj. Thank you for talking to me, and I hope now I get to share the stage with you very soon, and we'll co-host an event together. And I'll come down to clean the beach as well one of these weekends with you.
Super. Manifesting 2025, us to do a show together. It'll happen. I feel like it'll happen. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
What a fun conversation that was. Thank you once again for tuning in, and do share with me what you learned from this conversation in the comments below and anything else that you'd like me to shine light upon in future episodes. And if you haven't caught up on the past episodes, please do tune into them and let me know what you think. As always, like, share, subscribe, spread the word, and stay tuned for future conversations on Speak with Anuj. Thank you.